So,
Hello, everyone.
that happened.
Oh my god.
So that happened.
Remember how I said we couldn't cut anything out of Death Twins Part 2?
We couldn't cut anything.
Nothing. Oh my god. Oh wow. Okay, we can talk about lore.
There was so much that we did cut, actually, because our raw audio on that was something like 3.5 hours long.
Yeah, it was 3.5 hours.
And I got it cut down to 2 hours and 10 minutes. So I cut almost an hour and a half of audio out of that thing.
Like, oh my god. We cut everything that was not essential.
We thought about splitting it into 2 episodes, but where the split would have had to happen, we would have had like a regular sized episode and then like an incredibly short episode.
Yeah, because the best place to cut it would have been like
after
around the ritual. Yeah. And like the thought of cutting it there was just kind of, it would have made the second half super underwhelming. And we were like,
okay, this is our first 2-hour plus episode. Here we go. So
we probably won't have another 2-hour one this campaign.
The only thing I could see that maybe happening for is the finale combat, but that's if shit gets really crazy.
Yeah. Knock on wood.
So hopefully that was the longest episode of campaign 1, but no promises. 12 is normal sized. 12 is like a little bit over an hour. So that's good. At least.
We've gotten to the point where like 12 cut down to under an hour and 20 minutes, and we were like, oh, it's a short one.
Yeah.
We're like, anyway.
Okay. Yeah. So let's get into it. Talking points.
Still doing a giveaway.
Yep. Still going on. 10 followers until we do the drawing, and 3 winners will get their choice of either a Fee or a Leo chibi keychain. Look how cute they are. They are so precious.
Yes, we love them. Yeah. So that's out of the way. Our next talking point. You know how we've been talking about the Battle of Omegroth bonus episodes for our $5 patrons? The first one comes out this Friday. Woo! Get hype? It's a lot. It's gonna be a lot.
Not so much get hype as buckle your seatbelt.
Yeah.
Keep hands and feet inside the episode at all times. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Okay, now let's talk about the playlist. So the first track on the episode 11 playlist is When the Blue Finally Came by the Wonder Years, which I believe, have we used it before?
No.
Oh, okay. We talked about
it. It was in the pitch for Death Twins Part 1, and we ended up not using it.
Yeah, it's sorry, our computer is frozen. Our Chrome is frozen. Hello. Okay, there we go. Watch the sun burn out and dig itself a grave in the ocean south of Sydney off the interstate, and I hold out my hand trying not to shake. Watched you jump off of a cliff and start to levitate. And yeah, I'm afraid, but I'll follow you anyway. When the blue finally came, it swallowed up everything.
Yeah, that was very much a scene setter for like when Elander and Durella were children.
Yeah.
And like her always kind of being the one that had the weirder things going on.
Yeah. And specifically the scene with the thaumaturgy spell.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But like, notice how afraid their mother got that she specifically was out of the house. Like she had always had a lot more of the like phenomena going on around her, I think.
Yeah. But so that was a good scene setter for their dynamic. The next song was Queendom by Aurora. Go ahead.
That's a Durella song for like the young adult chapter of the episode. Mm-hmm. The sea waves are my evening gown, and the sun on my head is my crown. I made this queendom on my own, and all the mountains are my throne. Drink until you've had enough. I'll drink from your hands. I will be your warrior. I will be your lamb. Like it's more about like how she was pretty much offering to do anything that she could to solve the problems that were happening around that part of the episode. It was sort of a mood setter for that. And then Inkpot Gods by the Amazing Devil. The Amazing Devil's a fucking great band. If you haven't listened to
It's
them,
good. You should listen to
they're so
We
good.
like 'em.
If you like The Witcher, it's Jaskier from The Witcher's band.
Yeah.
Let's see. It's a duet, so
Yeah,
there's
yeah,
a
yeah.
lot in it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what you hear is not silence, it's just the trees waiting to hear what next you'll hum, and what you see is not the dark, it's just the gods turning ink pots because they know what you'll become.
Ugh. And to those gods I will speak bluntly, weave an accord. If you ever touch or harm him, please rest assured that you might not fear a man, but to a woman by the end you'll kneel and plea. Because I'm more than what my mom told me to be.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Well, and then in the first verse,
Yeah.
it ends with the other person in the duet saying, "But it seems the world does. I'll stay because I will be the man my father never was." Yeah. So
Ugh.
this is a song about the generational trauma and the cycles that we have outlined through the entire podcast. It's a
Yeah.
song about Kimmerl and Kiva. It's a
Yeah.
song about Alander and Justice. It's a song about Fee and Leo.
Yeah. Ugh. It's very much the connection between all three of them. And
Yeah.
yes.
If I don't make it back to where I've gone, just know I loved you all along are the closing lines of the song. And like I think it just Inkpot Gods applies to every sibling duo
Yeah.
pretty much, other than I think like there are elements of like Moreland and Valorant that it doesn't fit.
Yeah,
but
yeah,
like
but
every brother and sister
that we've had
duet
on the
that we've had. Yeah.
Ugh, the parallels. Oh, it's bad. And then
Iscariot by Walk the Moon.
I forgot this was on here.
This was for like the scene where Justice made the decision to file off her horns and go rogue and like proverbially shred her credit cards and disappear. Like,
why did you say that? Okay. There's a lot of lyrics to quote from this one.
Until now, I knew this of myself, that if you had thrown yourself down into the lion's den, my brother, I'd follow you in. Perhaps I lacked some foresight. I should have known, but brother, you were so right. Sure as the setting sun, you can't trust just anyone.
That's what you want, but it's not what you're asking for. I said, that's what you're asking, but you're going to get more than you bargained for. I said, that's what you had, but you don't have it anymore. You had it coming.
Yeah. I never imagined you dead, but tell me, are you even aware that all that we did, you undo, Iscariot, you fool? Like, yeah. Iscariot by Walk the Moon is
it's a song. It's a hell of a song. Oh goodness. Everybody yelling over the playlist. So true. People can hold so much generational trauma.
God Hunter by Aviators was the Alander response to Iscariot.
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah, I don't. Oh my God.
When you're sinful to the bone, unholy, and you've claimed yourself a throne like me, wield power of your own making, God Hunter's gonna hunt you down. If you're something more than flesh ascended and you've taken on the rest to end it, then she'll find you in a dream tormented. God Hunter's gonna hunt you down. Like it's related to the like Civil War part of the episode.
Fear confined to the depths of my mind for what could be such a threat to me, the conqueror of time. Yet the whispers of her reckoning have kept the spirits beckoning to look upon my crime. Blood and war when the world is no more. She's been watching for a century with hatred and with scorn. If you know the hunter's coming, then you hide or keep on running because she's slain the gods before. Oh God. And then the last track. This is the most evil thing I've ever put on a playlist. I take full responsibility for this one, and it's the most evil thing I've ever done.
Way Out There by Lord Huron. And this is another thing where it's like my little neurodivergent music video brain took over. I'm turning Italian from how much this affected me, because this is another one that is about all the dynamics, including the shit we're going to see with Moreland and Valorant when Omegroth comes out. But the thing that got me was the thing that got me was in relationship to the final scene of this episode is there are many war flames when mine is gone. They will build me no shrines and sing me no songs. With like Justice's big monologue about how she knew she was going to be forgotten.
Well, the whole first verse is, I'm a long way from the land that I left. I've been running through life and cruising towards death. If you think that I'm scared, you've got me wrong. If you don't know my name, you'll know it now. I belong bodily to the earth. I'm just wearing old bones from those that came first. There are many more flames when mine is gone. They will build me no shrines and sing me no songs.
And that is so much, about what she was going through in that moment. But something about the line of I belong bodily to the earth, I'm just wearing old bones from those that came first speaks so much to the cycle of generational trauma that followed the events of this episode.
Yeah.
Like it because of how it kept repeating.
This is the beginning of all of it.
Yeah, because of how it kept repeating. If I had a nickel for every time somebody in the Valsine family killed their sibling and then named their kid after the sibling they killed, I'd have 2 nickels. But it is very weird that it happened twice.
Yeah, I think we're gonna tackle this in like the final few episodes of the podcast, but the third kid that Olander and Lorray have.
Yeah, the baby.
Dorella.
Yeah, the baby that Lorray was pregnant with at the end of all that.
Yeah, they named that baby Dorella. Yeah. If I had a nickel, I'd have 2 nickels. Also, from Way Out There, the final verse of Find Me Way Out There, there's no road that will lead us back. When you follow the strange trails, they will take you who knows where. If I found a way to stay with you tonight, it would only make me late for a date I can't escape. This playlist was
a lot.
Yeah, okay. Somebody in the chat said HBO series When, and then that song is perfect. Thank you.
I belong bodily to the earth. I'm just wearing old bones of those that came first. I mean, it's about the generational trauma and the cycles, which like that was something that was really important to us is like we had to establish so firmly what the cycle was. Like we had to establish that as far back as 10,000 years, people in this family have been betraying and hurting and killing each other.
Yeah.
And Leo
for
and
the
Fee,
sake of the greater good or for the sake of their own power.
Yeah. And Leo and Fee are the first people that said no.
Yeah. Yeah. And like it was in season 1, Leo and Fee could very easily have become Olander and Dorella, and they have made the choice every step of the way to not and to stand by each other. And it's about breaking the cycle.
Yeah, and the fact that is a choice, and like that's a choice that they made. It was a choice that they started making the moment that Leo reached into that portal to try to pull Fee out at the end of season 1. Like that was the first time either one of them made that choice. So we needed to give the background of just how revolutionary that choice was to really make it land.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Going into our questions, first question was, how long have you been planning this prequel? The entire time. Did both of you know about Justice when Fee found Kiva's cloak?
Not necessarily.
I didn't know that was meant to be Justice when Fee found the cloak. I found that out later.
Yeah.
That was something that Barry had set up, but we knew about Olander and Justice at that point. I just didn't know that was intended to be.
Well, we didn't know about the magic items at that time.
Yeah, we didn't know about the magic items.
So you didn't know what your magic item was going to be, and I didn't know what my magic item was going to be.
Yeah, because we invented those separately. Yeah. And like I knew there was a magic item, and I didn't know it was going to be the cloak, and I did not know that Justice had the cloak at that point. That was something we established later. Like we planned the events and we planned the
existence, I would say.
The existence of Olander and Justice and like the dynamic between Olander and Justice and how things ended with them. Those we planned out way at the beginning.
Yeah, but like at the point where like Fee found the cape and everything, we didn't have planned out like how and where Justice had died and things like that. Like we just knew that she did die and he did kill her.
We left that open for ourselves so that because it was going to be another 2 seasons before we got here. Like we left that open so we could improvise a little more and have a little more wiggle room and just set it up to hit people pretty hard when this happened. And then next question was, how much do y'all keep from each other for the sake of surprise in your storytelling? Not as much we kept now. More. Yeah. In season 1, we kept a lot from each other.
We kept almost everything from each other.
Pretty much everything.
1. Yeah. Other than like big overarching shit, because we weren't laying the foundation for big overarching shit in season 1. Like that was more. We had
season
to get more.
1 was a lot more about like exposition and like revealing everything and getting characters established.
Yeah, and then we did more collaborative work in season 2 about like, okay, here's what we're gonna drop at this moment. Like we got a lot more collaborative, and then season 3, like I think the only really big surprise that we've had in season 3 that neither one of us knew about was like the thing with Boreas being at the party.
That was the only thing we've like really surprised each other with this season. Yeah, was just fucking Boreas being at that stupid party. Oh, I knew that the plan was to get Feast separated in that episode, but I didn't know what was going on, and I thought that was the real Boreas. Like that was the biggest surprise for either of us this season. But like season 1, because so much of it was set up, like we didn't know anything about what each other was planning. We just knew where we had to end up at the end of the season. Yeah, like
so it was a lot more loosey goosey. Like than the
I know
seasons.
I got you with Bobbin in season 1.
You got me with Bobbin hardcore, yeah.
And I didn't know anything about the beacon in season 1. Like that was how separated things were. But as we've gone on and things have gotten more intricate, we've had to keep each other very informed. We often
because
like,
Leo and Fee are back together now.
Yeah.
You know, it was easier to do those things and do those big twists.
Yeah.
When they were like separate and not part of the same mission and part of the same.
Yeah. And as we've been doing DM switches within episodes, like we've had to explain a lot more to each other. Yeah, I think we keep mechanics from each other a lot. Like if we're doing like fight mechanics, we'll keep those separate from each other. But as far as plot things go, we are both very plugged in.
Well, yeah, like, and especially with like we have things where we have a dungeon crawl mechanic that like I'm not allowed to look at because we know that you're going to be DMing that scene, and like I don't want to metagame the dungeon, so I'm not looking at your notes. And then like I'm DMing a combat later in that same episode, and like you're not allowed to look at my notes.
Yeah,
like,
that's the episode that we're going to be recording next. So like, our next question was, what were each of your favorite moments and characters from the prequels? I like Scytha.
I love Scytha. That's the goddess of debauchery from Death Twins Part 1 that ran the bar. Yeah,
that was really good.
I do love You Made Everything, Mom. How special is it?
The comedy in the first part of Art of the Death Twins duology was really good. I like a lot of the drama that we managed to pack into the second part. I liked being able to deliver, first of all, Elander's whole monologue. Loved doing that. Off the dome, fantastic experience. Loved it. And I liked being able to set up not a parallel, but like the divergence between Elander and Justice and Leo and Fee of Elander lets go of his sister's hand.
And and there's so much thematically that happens with Leo and Fee where they do decide to reach out and take each other's hand. And the dichotomy. It's about the metaphor.
Dichotomy, that's the word. It's about the metaphor. But yeah, and I liked being able to set it up and then repeat it. I like being able to do like from the beginning of the episode, have Elander lets go of his sister's hand be like a running theme. I was
well, and how the last thing that Justice did was reach out for him to grab his hand. Yeah.
Yep.
And that was probably the last thing she did before she died.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
I also like being able to deliver some of Mia's backstory finally. Like Mia has been such a secretive character and so withdrawn and not willing to talk about their shit that like being able to deliver any information on Mia was just something I was so hyped for.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I think Mia is actually such a meaty character, and like their motivations after you consider everything from the last 2 episodes, you know, like after considering the last 2 episodes, like going back to the way they acted in season 1 is like fascinating to consider. Like, because if you consider the first time we see them, which I think was episode 14.
It was 14. It was 14. The first thing that Mia did on screen was kill a couple guards and break Leo out of jail.
Yeah. And was super nonchalant about it. And it's just like when you go back to that with the context that you have from the Death Twins episode, it's like, whoa. Like,
yes. Somebody in the chat just said, one person said, oh, Mia. And the other person said, need more Mia lore. So true.
We don't get a lot more like lore.
We don't get a lot more lore, but we get there's a lot more context to Mia's actions for the rest of the series.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is good.
And they become a lot more forthcoming with it after they realize that there are people that know who and what they are. Like,
someone in the chat said, Mia, my everything. I brush the dust off of them like they're little fancy archaeological rocks.
so true.
So true. Mia goes in the centrifuge. Another question was also any favorite Easter eggs you're willing to share?
The whole thing about the lady in the cape from
Yeah,
season
that was
1,
a big
like,
thing.
that was the biggest Easter egg.
And like the first thing we like, one of the things that was mentioned about her was that she had like bumps on her forehead that could have once been horns. Like that was an Easter egg from, or that was a pretty subtle Easter egg that was. What else? Oh, I did color theming in the transcript. This is not an Easter egg about the plot of the episodes, but if you look at the transcript, the highlight colors for Elander and Justice are a very bluish green and kind of a dusty pink, which are both kind of desaturated and moving away from blue versions of Leo and Fee's highlight colors. So they are literally visually further apart than Leo and Fee, and that was something I was very proud of.
And we're using those same colors for Morlun and Valoran in the Omegroth episodes. Yeah. It's about the cycles. It's about the parallels. I don't know if this is an Easter egg. Well, I think it's something worth bringing up now. Soren had all this shit figured out.
Yeah, if you listen to episode 11 of season 1, Soren episode 9 of season 1, Soren like explicitly says something about Australia as we know it and Australians as we know them not belonging here and like stuff like that from the beginning. Like if Soren had lived like another week or two, he would have figured everything out.
Yeah.
And that is so tragic. Somebody in the chat said, oh, the things about bumps that once were horns confused me so much at the time. Somebody else said something Morlun ought to get it from somewhere. Yeah, it's about the parallels.
But yeah, like Soren had the vast majority of this shit figured out.
Yeah. Also, like speaking of the Morlun parallels, like the way that I crafted Elander's monologue and the way that Elander talked about his motivations was very intentionally a Morlun parallel. Like a lot of him talking about, I do exactly what I have to do. And
something, the greater good, something.
Yeah. And Morlun talks about a lot about like doing what's necessary and doing what has to be done. Like that was a very intentional parallel I set up that a couple people caught, which was great. What's another? I'm trying to think. Oh, and Fee's vision in episode 9 of season 3, where she saw the children running on the black sand.
That was
beach.
Elander and Justice.
Yep. Yeah, and especially like we've been setting up that Kimberl and Kiva appear to Leo and Fee around like this black sand beach and the lighthouse since season 1 and the water since season 1, and like being able to reveal that that is because of Elander and Justice and because Luxtagallen was their home and Kimberl and Kiva tied themselves so closely to them, being able to reveal that was fantastic. Somebody said the parallels between the different pairs of siblings are amazing. Differences and similarities. So good. Thank you. We've set it up very carefully. Somebody else asked, so did all of the Silent Cities get wiped out by the plague the way Omegroth was? What happened to the other ones if not?
Omegroth for sure got wiped out by plague. The Silent City that Fee was in the first time she went to the Silent City.
That was like old Omegroth. Yeah.
Where Elander was talking about like fucking 70,000 people died. Like,
yeah, because it was the worst up north. And like we talk about a lot about how the north of Australia is less populated. That is both because of this whole plague thing and because of the Volduran War wiping out a lot of people.
Yeah, because the biggest battlefields were up in the north.
Yeah, the other Silent Cities that we've talked about, we can reveal this now. The Silent Cities in Australia are Galshona, are Old Valental, are Old Omegroth, and I believe you said Old Ilneus.
Old Ilneus,
yeah. Galshona, everybody died. Like
because it was a victim of a religious genocide, essentially.
Galshona is empty because everybody there died and no one was allowed to go back. Omegroth is empty because they evacuated it because of the plague. With Old Valental and Old Ilneus, it's kind of a mix.
Old Ilneus is kind of an interesting thing that happened there. But Old Valental, it was they voluntarily evacuated the city because they were in the middle of trying to religiously overhaul the entire country of Astria. And there was no way that people could still live in that city and believe what the powers that be needed them to believe. Which was like the mass outlawing of worship of Kiva and the subsequent murder of anybody that didn't listen. So they basically just shut Old Valental down and built another city.
And it was, I think a lot of it was spun as like Ilander talking about having a brighter tomorrow and moving on from bad things in the past and bullshit. So I think that was kind of a voluntary evacuation because Ilander was making all these promises about the city that would be set up around the palace that he was building himself and around his rule. And like that became modern day Valental. So that was interesting. And like I think Omegroth is probably the only one that kept its name because the evacuation was what it was. I think
we said Valental kept its name and Ilneus. They all kept their names.
But yeah, I think we did that for recognition purposes, didn't we? Yeah. It's a very interesting thing when we talk about like everyone having to leave the Silent Cities because like it happened over such a span of time and for such like complicated reasons. But I think the modern day conception is all based on Old Omegroth of like, no, you can't go in there because of the plague. I think that has all been based on Old Omegroth, which you couldn't go in for a long time
because of the plague. But what a convenient way. But
it's a convenient excuse to keep everybody away from truths that were inconvenient to Ilander Valsine's rule. Dropping stuff. Next question was, do you go into detail at all about the like rebuilds of Omegroth? And if not, go into it now. It's cool.
Well, we just talked about that. All of the new cities were built in ways that would cover up the old patterns of religious worship that were there because people worshiping Kiva was something that couldn't happen anymore under Ilander's rule. So
and it was very much like
we're gonna start over.
And the reason they're so close to the old Silent Cities is because it is easier to relocate people if you're just saying, oh, you're just gonna move like a couple miles.
But also don't go in here because you'll get sick and you'll die.
Our next question was, can you explain the mechanics of how Divine Soul Sorcery works? Like, does every Divine Soul Sorcerer in Astria have to kill people to use their powers? No. This is important to establish. Like, Ilander was killing people to fuel everyone's powers, not just his own. I think I kind of didn't make that very clear in the monologue, so I'll establish it now. Like, the kids that were running around his front lawn did not have to personally kill anyone to fuel their magic. Like
the crack in the floor is important.
The crack in the floor is important.
Because that's the power source.
Yeah, and the magic is specifically tied to Ilander. So Ilander killing people fueled the magic as an entity separate from all the people that used it. Like it's very much it was kind of a case of like portions of magic, if that makes sense.
Well, because initially Ilander had to kill one person to save 1,000. But then with every person that he used that power source to resurrect in a way that was not natural for the world, like a true resurrection or like a raised dead or like something that we don't have in our universe, because the strongest resurrection magic we have in our universe is for normal folks is Revivify. So like him using that magic for like a true resurrection or a raised dead or anything like that required him to pull off of that external power source that he got when he broke that deal, and he had to keep feeding it because it was an external power source.
It's very much like, okay, if you have a gallon of water, that'll keep you going for a while if you're just one person. If you have a gallon of water that you have to share among yourself and like 20 people, you're gonna need to refill it.
Yeah, exactly. And like he didn't realize how it was
Yeah.
all going to extrapolate, like
Yeah.
when everything started. But it was
Yeah.
like everybody that he brought up through supernatural, I guess, means of resurrection magic also became a divine soul sorcerer. And
Someone in
then
the chat is just losing their mind.
and then also his kids, you know,
Yeah.
were born because like his DNA was altered by the fact that he was walking around with a big old chunk of Kimmerl soul inside of him.
Yeah,
Like the kids he had after
Oriana did not inherit
she
divine soul
wasn't a sorcerer.
sorcery, but baby Loris and baby Dorella,
Yeah.
yeah.
And then the bloodline goes out from there, and like
Yeah.
all of those kids that he saved, they grew up and then they had kids, and then sorcery was a dominant trait.
Yep.
And their kids were sorcerers.
Yep.
So now we're, you know, 10,000 years down the road, we're up to the point that like what 10-15% of the Australian population is
Yeah, I think you said
sorcerers,
something like that. Yep.
so how many people have to die to fuel that level of power?
I wonder.
Yeah.
Oh goodness. But yeah, without going into too much detail about some things that are still to be revealed, the crack in the floor is very important, but like not every divine soul sorcerer needs to personally kill people to fuel their magic.
No, it's mostly, I would say it's mostly tied to the Archduke, just because those are the people that are the most closely tied to Lander Valsine's bloodline. Like, yeah,
and that are mostly the most closely tied to the deal that he made. Like they have inherited it along with the seat. Yeah, like it's a whole thing. But yeah, I'm not gonna spoil anything. Somebody in the chat just said, "Oh no." Our next question was, were the Tormare and Dakaran bloodlines just set to work under all the archdukes in their respective roles, or did that just happen, or was it just a fun narrative thing?
That was our way of framing the fact that all of the like old Australian aristocracy families tied back to Elander Valsine. And like either people that he saved or people that worked for him. Like we talked about old Mr. Shakrana, who ran the ferry, who was essentially, you know, an old fisherman who ran the ferry, but his son died of the plague and Elander brought him back, and he brought him back a sorcerer. Boom, there's the seed of an Australian noble family. Imra Dakaran decided to diverge from the church at the time because she thought that Elander was right. Boom, there's a seed of an Australian noble family.
And like not necessarily all of these people had divine soul sorcery endure in their bloodlines for 10,000 years, like because that I think was something that was more important to House Valsine than anybody else. But like, because we see like Fenn's not a sorcerer, and we see Soren was not a sorcerer, and Lorelai is one, but she's not a divine soul sorcerer. But like a lot of Australian nobility prizes divine soul sorcery, and a lot of people seek out having children that will have divine soul sorcery. So like that's how you get people like Alasha. Who is a very powerful sorceress in her own right.
Well, yeah, because like Imra Dakaran wasn't a sorcerer. She was a cleric.
Exactly. Yeah. But yeah, it's very much, we just wanted to establish that like all of the close Australian noble families are part of a ruling class that Elander Valsine set up because he took over everything to fuel his own power, and he put these specific people in power with him.
And that's the seed of pretty much every Australian noble family. Yeah. It all goes down to that Kimmerl blood. I guess it's not Kimmerl blood, it's Kimmerl soul.
It's Kimmerl soul.
Which is, you know, like it's fun to consider that, like, you know, Elander was the original person, like containing whatever fragment of soul that was, and it has just kept splitting up between people. But like that one little spark needs more fuel the more people that it disseminates amongst. Which is how we got where we are right now. Remember how Justice said that this was a slippery fucking slope? She wasn't kidding.
Justice wasn't kidding. That slope is slippery. Our next question was, what happened to the Night Elves and the Selayan Elves? Why aren't they in Australia anymore?
Xenobiology talk, go.
Yes. Okay, first thing to establish, the Night Elves, when we've talked about a common ancestor that the Australian Elves and that the Stormfolk have, we were talking about the Night Elves. We've talked about we did a whole xenobiology thing of we established 2 species that kind of lived on Illyria when the landing happened. That were
which was almost 50,000 years
which
ago.
was almost 50,000 years ago in present day, which was the night elves and day elves, and they were like they still exist. The land that they are actually from is way to the west.
Yeah, well, because we've talked about like how the actual
somebody in the chat said, "How about we all agree to stop casting spells for a little bit?"
But yeah, we've talked about how the actual like geographical theater of everything that's going on in campaign 1 is like comparatively kind of a small part of Illyria.
Yeah. Illyria is a much larger planet than the space that we have been in. But like, yeah, the land that the night elves and day elves are from is like way to the west, and a small portion of those populations migrated east and couldn't get back because of the storms around the Zephyr Isles. So like the day elves that we've discussed are like the ancestors of the sort of elf that Ravane is, that mostly settled in the area of Dowrier. And they were like cooperative civilizations that just kind of lived in that area now because they couldn't get back, and kind of adapted to it. And like that's why we have portals on both mainland Australia and the main continent of Tordoon, Dowrier, Voldur, because like they needed to be able to travel between these 2 separate civilizations, that had very different needs.
Yeah, and then the landing happened.
Yeah.
And then you had a lot of people with alien DNA who were very sensitive to Illyrian pathogens.
Yeah.
And landing in Australia
would die if you stared at them too long.
Yeah.
And a lot of people that were living in the place that would become Australia agreed to kind of help those people out. Like it was a very like philanthropic idea of like, okay, we'll help these people get adjusted, and like everybody else can kind of back off so they don't kill them, and we'll just stand over here and just push some meat at you.
Yeah.
Have food here. I don't know.
Yeah.
But
that's where Australia's like isolationism really started, was because of the idea that like these people will get sick and die if the wind blows at them crossways.
And then as they acclimated, people started starting families with each other and with the night elf population that was still living there. And like the populations that were still living in Dowrier and in the Zephyr Isles just kind of separated and also adapted to their own areas. And now it's 50,000 years later and nobody knows what a night elf is.
But they do still exist, like in other parts. We have planned a mini campaign for like a either a bonus episode series or for something like later, like between campaigns or something.
Yeah, and if we put out a source book, we'll talk more about this.
But one of the PCs in that mini campaign is a night elf. So
just because we think it's fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, we had established these very cooperative populations that just kind of went to go see if there was anything else out there and got stuck.
Yeah.
And then aliens came out of the sky and they were like, okay, I guess.
Well, and we've talked about the night elves being like our version of drow, because we think that elves should be weird and that drow should be bat elves. And so we made bat elves.
We made bat elves. But that was very fun. We had like established like the night elves we had talked about. We had justified the bioluminescence with like they have kind of an anglerfish thing going on, as like they're nocturnal predators that just lure things out of the trees by glowing at them. Whereas day elves are more like cervid based, and they have like I pitched them having antlers that like the population in Dowrier have just lost because they're not useful for the land that they're living in now. But like stuff like that, and they're very much more diurnal and tend to stick more to the vegetarian sort of things. Like it's very much a symbiotic kind of relationship, that because they've just evolved in the same area to help each other out. And then it just has changed so much in 50,000 years that the populations that live in Asheria, the Zephyr Isles, and Dowrier are unrecognizable.
Yeah, because essentially we had said that like Stormfolk are what happens when you have the original, like the common ancestor of the Night Elves, intermingling with like mermaids. Yeah.
The lesson here is that Night Elves are very adventurous. Meanwhile, the day elf population have just been chilling.
Yeah.
Just been chilling. They're like, fine. And then they've gotten, obviously the present day dowry elves have been like affected a lot by like Voldor imperialism, and also everybody in Tordoon being kind of bad shit and
Yeah.
But yeah.
And well, the chill. Like the phenotype of the modern Australian elf basically comes from like Selayan elves and day elves both having a shit ton, Australian elves and night elves. Selayan elves and night elves.
We made it
so many elves. Names. Too many elves. Too many elves spoils the kitchen. Selayan elves and night elves both having a shit ton of recessive genes that essentially resulted
you can see pretty much anything that exists in like modern day Australian elves and in like infernal elves in either Selayan elves or night elves. But yeah, we did a lot of fun xenobiology that we mostly implied. And if we ever put out a source book, we'll talk more about it. But someone else asked, at the time the campaign takes place, does anyone but the priesthood know about where the power behind divine soul sorcery comes from? 3 characters that we have named in the podcast, besides Leo and Fee, know what is going on with the power behind divine soul sorcery, and they are Morlin, Defiance, and Sid.
Well, and the majority. Well, yeah, named characters.
Characters. The named characters that know what is going on are Morlin, Defiance, and Sid. That's it.
And now Leo and Fee, because they have gotten all of this directly beamed into their brain.
Yeah.
And I think something that's important to bring up is that Morlin, Defiance, and Sid do not know the actual.
Well, Defiance did not, but yeah.
Shh.
I'm saying in the past tense.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
No one told Dexter.
No one told Dexter. Not yet.
Not yet. Yeah, so yeah, Morlin, Defiance, and Sid all don't know the actual truth of what is going on, because the story has been disseminated down through the Australian royal line to make Elander look better than he actually was.
Yeah.
So like everything that everybody knows from that point of view is doctored.
Yeah.
So like Morlin doesn't actually know the story of like Elander and Defiance and everything that happens. Sid doesn't know that.
Justice.
Yeah.
Talking is hard.
Sorry,
it's
God.
Okay. It's okay. But yeah, Morlin doesn't know the actual story of Elander and Justice. He knows the version that has been told throughout history to the present, and he knows the mechanics that are keeping divine soul sorcery and Asheria running.
Yeah, he knows that people need to die for it to keep going.
Yep, and every Archduke before him has also known that.
Yeah, but as far as people that know the actual truth and the actual story of what went on, it's just Leo and Fee at this point. Like,
yeah. Oof. Our next question was, were the portal stones connected to the ones in other places around the world, Bogwalder, the Zephyr Isles, Askaya, etc., during Elander and Dorella's time? No, they had been shut down because of Asheria and isolationism, and the portals were, that's why there's so many portals in Asheria, is they were being used as a network throughout the country. There were other ones in other places to get from place to place.
Well, that was from when the Night Elves and the Day Elves were like, doing all their shit. But like after the land, like I think they got shut down shortly after the landing.
Yeah.
When people in what is now Australia realized, like, oh, these people that just showed up here get so sick so fast. Like,
help them out.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I think they built additional portals to make travel around Australia faster and safer. But like, they had been cut off from the rest of the world by that point, because it had been 40,000 years. And like also that's why trying to teleport into Australia fucked Leo and Fee so hard at the end of season 1 was because they are cut off. They cannot get in.
Yeah. Whatever ways that magic worked, there was no way in.
Yeah.
Australia is a closed circuit, I guess.
Yeah,
is what you could say.
Yeah. That's, you could say that. Someone else asked what became of Justice's kids, and someone separate asked, we want to know anything you thought about when it came to vengeance, mercy, and truth, like not only them as characters, but also thematically. Okay.
Mercy and Vengeance founded the Enclave
Yeah.
that Verity and her mom and Fee's birth mother and
Yeah.
her uncle are from.
Yeah. They both went on to do that. Vengeance probably did a lot of revolutionary stuff and killed a lot of people.
And probably died young and violently.
yeah, honestly. Whereas Mercy, I think, became just the matriarch of the Silent City enclaves. Like, she very much kept her mother's revolutionary group going and everybody that they managed to get out of there going, and kept their enclave as a shelter for anybody that needed to get away from greater Ashurian society.
But also we've discussed that, like, those two girls, for as old as they were when everything went down, were probably so traumatized by everything that didn't happen, that did happen, that they didn't talk about their mother. You know, they didn't talk about the way things actually played out because it was so traumatizing.
Yeah, and we think Truth ended up being kind of a precursor to the Beacon, and kind of her circle were kind of a precursor to the Beacon, because, like,
well, she was asleep for the whole thing, and like the equivalent of like 3.
Yeah,
you know?
like she spent probably the rest of her life trying to figure out what happened,
and her
why.
sisters wouldn't talk about it.
Yeah. Like, it was very much she wanted the closure of figuring out what happened to her mother and why it happened. And I don't think she ever got that, honestly.
Well, no, because the Beacon's still working on that.
Like, because the Beacon's still working on that, and also because Justice's body was undisturbed for 10,000 years.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I think it is something that she chased for the rest of her life, is figuring out what was going on in Ashuria.
And that's very much a precursor to the Beacon. Like, a bunch of people that are chasing that truth. Like, so that's what happened to the kids.
Someone else asked to talk about the Valstein family tree because it's cool. Okay. We have purposefully not overdeveloped most of the Valstein family tree, because, like, we wanted to have space
10,000 years of wiggle room.
Yeah. And also because we didn't want to do 10,000 years of a monarchy. Oh my god, can you imagine? We didn't want to plan all that out.
Even though the people all live like 500 years on average.
Yeah, but like still, that's the equivalent of like 2,000 years for us. Like, it's a lot. But like we have established very pointedly, like, Elander and Justice and their kids, and we think Elander's son Loris, because he was the first because he was the older of Elander's kids that had magic, he went on to be like the first proper archduke, like the second archduke, like however you want to categorize that, and went on to establish a lot of the way that Ashuria works today, and a lot of the way that specifically the position of Archduke works today, because, like, Elander didn't know what the fuck he was doing. Elander wanted
clearly,
clearly Elander didn't know what the fuck he's doing. God, Elander, he's so stupid. But clearly he didn't know what he was doing, and I think Loris was kind of the first person to be like, okay, well, I'm gonna actually set up a coherent government. And I have the money and the power to back everything that I say up. Who's going to stop me? And I think a lot of the way things work now is products of Loris trying to salvage something coherent from a government that essentially his dad slapped together to try and consolidate his power. Like, yeah, I think a lot
of like furthering the lies of like the way that the church dissolved, and like why we need to outlaw all of this shit, and why we need to kill all these people. Like,
I think Loris is the reason that things are still standing in Ashuria, in a large part because sirens. Cool. Because he was kind of the one that had the opportunity to look at things that his dad had set up out of what he believed to be necessity, and look at it and go, okay, here's what's going to convince people going forward, and here's what's not.
Well, yeah, and like that makes sense. Like, his point of view there, like the last time he saw his aunt would have been
when he was a baby.
When he was a
Yeah,
baby, like, he
yeah.
probably didn't remember her.
Yeah, you didn't know anything about her.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that was something that was interesting. And we think, we think he very much set up like the inheritance of the seat of Archduke, both to back up his own power and to keep things going for like his kids. And like a lot of what is established about both the public image of Australia and the way that Australian nobility conducts itself was very much Loras Valsine.
But yeah, like every archduke like going down from Olander has known that like,
yeah,
hey, you need to feed people to this to keep everything that we know going. Like, yeah.
I think Loras also probably helped set up the office of Hierophant and its relationship with the Archduke. Because I think the one thing that I have had in my head about Loras is that I think he is very much the person to be like, well, I don't want to get my own hands dirty. Absolutely not.
Yeah. So I'm going to put somebody else in charge of feeding the machine.
I'm going to figure out how to get somebody else to do that. And then I'm going to go spread propaganda or whatever the fuck he was doing. You know?
Yeah. And so like essentially the Archduke, the Hierophant are the only people that, well, the Archduke, the Hierophant, and like a lot of the priesthood on Luxtogalen are the people that actually know what this shit entails.
Yeah. Our next question was talk about Olander. Do I have to? They added the negative tone tag.
But the thing was, you gave him so much pathos. Like,
thanks.
The fact that he is arguably the biggest villain in the series, like worse than Morlun, worse than pretty much anything we've seen, but he had so much empathy and pathos to him, was I think a very good
thanks
characterization.
Thanks.
Because like, how mad are you gonna get at somebody that is saving dying children? You know?
Yeah, a lot of his pathos needed to be kind of in his monologue, and that was something that I knew going in, was I needed to justify his previous characterization turning to his end game characterization, and B, I kind of needed to make his motivations sound reasonable and sound like he could get there. You know what I mean? And like sound like, I didn't want it to sound like leaps of logic that were beyond the grasp of like a person. You know what I mean? Like I didn't want it to feel like something that he was just like, oh, well, gotta kill people, I guess.
Well, and like the decision that he made at the point that he made it, like I don't think that Olander ever could have conceptualized what is happening today.
Oh yeah.
And the way that things devolved outward from that. I don't think he ever could have thought of that or conceptualized it at all. Because if he had been able to, I think he would have made a different decision. And the fact that Justice was able to kind of have more of that foresight and be like, like, you know, how long is this going to go on? Like, eventually you're going to get to a point that this gets too big to ethically handle anymore.
Yeah, I think the central bit of Outlander's characterization is that he is someone who is deathly afraid of being helpless and of being wrong. Like, I don't think he can conceptualize himself as being in the wrong, because I think if he had done that at any point, the weight of it would have broken him.
Well, and that carries like down through the bloodline to Morlun. I mean, like, the
parallels. But yeah, I think the thing that was like the scariest for him and the thing that pushed him to his breaking point was being helpless, and like it's a little bit of egoism on his part, honestly, because like I think he conceptualized himself as, because he had as much power as he did and because he had the powers that he did have, as someone from a young age that was the only person that could solve certain situations. I think he conceptualized himself as like the last resort for everyone, you know? And I think that was his downfall ultimately, was that he got so in the habit of considering himself the last resort that he was not able to conceptualize himself as being fallible.
Yeah. Well, and really, like, we talk about
he sucks so bad.
We talk about his downfall, but like, let's discuss what actually happened in the end.
Yeah.
Justice was so terrified of dying alone and forgotten, and that's exactly what happened to her.
And Olander died of old age.
And
in his
Olander
bed.
died comfortable and old as shit in his bed, surrounded by family, with none of those consequences that
Yeah.
Kimrel had talked about
Yep.
affecting him.
Yep. Oh, but they're gonna get his descendants, aren't they?
Yeah.
Like that's the plot. This is Olander Valentine's comeuppance. The arc of this podcast. Somebody in the chat said Olander is so interesting, but in an Alasha way, which is terrible. Yeah. Yeah, like that's kind of what I was going for with him. Was I wanted him to be very interesting and I wanted him to have a lot of depth and a lot of pathos, but like at the end of the day, he's kind of a shitbag. Like he's bad. he is arguably the biggest villain in the podcast.
Yeah, at the end of the day, he prioritized his role as a savior and as the person that was going to solve all of this over his sister's life and over his family's well-being. Like, yeah.
Yep. Little shit. And then our last question before open question time. Oh, we're leaving it to like the very end this week. We're so sorry.
Well, we'll open question time a little bit more.
Yeah. Our last question was talk about Mia. Mia remembering. Mia's having the worst 50,000 years that a person has ever had. Mia's having the worst time. I wanted to put a lot of gravity in like, oh, by the way, open questions starting now. Go ahead. Like, we'll let it run for like 15 minutes.
Yeah,
it's fine.
We're gonna answer this, but put open questions.
Yeah. Like very much I wanted Mia to hit as somebody who devoted their life to the war that ultimately killed them and then had to keep going past the end of everyone that they ever cared about and the end of the home that they died for, and like what that would do to someone and someone's like unconscious mind is like, that's a lot. You know, like I think Mia watched a lot of people that they loved die, and I think Mia witnessed the end of everything that they had ever known and kept going. And that makes a lot of the way that they are.
Well, and how much of a choice that they had is like,
they didn't have a choice in it.
Like,
yeah, like it very much was on the whim of a death god. Mia cannot die now. Like on the whim of a death god, Mia had to continue past the end of everything they ever knew and past the end of everyone they ever loved, and they lost like the planet that they were from and have watched civilizations rise and fall now. And I think that explains a lot about Mia's present day nihilism
and their detachment from like their detachment from everything but Fen, honestly. Like they like on a base level, they don't care if Leo lives or dies.
Oh yeah.
They don't care if Fee lives or dies. You know, like they don't care about pretty much anything except this one person who they watched going through witnessing the loss of a person they loved more than anything.
Yeah. I think watching Fen break down after Fee went through the portal was the first thing that emotionally affected Mia since Justice died. Like, I think that was the first thing that actually got Mia since Justice's death.
Yeah, and I think I think the idea that Fee is the closest thing that's a connection to Justice now really fucks with them because they don't like Fee.
They don't like Fee. They don't like Fee at all. But like, I think that was the first thing that kind of shocked them out of their apathy in 10,000 years. And they are so attached to Fen now because that was the first time that they watched somebody go through what they went through and had to face the fact of, oh, I am the only person here who knows how to get up from this. And it was just, I think that was the basis. I think that was when Mia flirting with Fen as a joke became Mia actually giving a shit about Fen. And I think that is something that fucked with them a lot. And something that they kind of are holding on to very desperately because it's all they have. Somebody in the chat said Mia being basically the only legacy a lot of people have is such a thing, just God. Yeah. Someone else said, hey gays, so this is completely unrelated, but I have a question. What level was Defiance at when she died? Like, she was an Oathbreaker Paladin, right? What level? She
16.
was an Oathbreaker Paladin. She was level 16. Somebody else said, I want to hear more about Mia forever. So true. I love them. And then somebody else just sent eye emojis. Open question. We'll run for like 5-10 extra minutes. If anybody has other questions, we'll just riff. Oh my god, yawning.
But yeah, we're getting back to some shit.
Getting back to some shit.
Not in episode 12. Episode 12 is a one-way trip to Clown Town, my friends.
We're excited for episode 12 just because the last few episodes have been so heavy, and episode 12 is just us playing the worst game of Dragons we've ever played. The worst game of Dungeons and Dragons that we have ever played. Somebody else said, talk about the beacon and all this.
I mean, like,
in this situation, the beacon has been rocked by a lot of things, by the war especially, and
the schism.
Yeah. And like, I think the beacon is very fragmented right now, and Alasha is trying to consolidate it all as something that she runs. Mm-hmm. And I think a few beacon operatives died in the embassy, honestly, the ones that didn't work for Alasha.
I think if there's any big political thing going on in our like geographical theater for the campaign, you can always assume that there are a couple beacon operatives there.
Yeah.
But because there is no central leadership and there is nobody calling the shots, and like Alasha being kind of the first person that wants to call the shots and wants to consolidate everything, there's that to consider.
Next question was, do you remember the number of the episode when Defiance died by chance? It was
season 2, episode 17.
No, I think it was because we had hold on.
I'm looking it up.
Yeah, look it up. Perry's looking it up. Next question was, how advanced was the world before the merger went south? We think what happened with Saleya basically was they were at like our current level of technology, and they had a nuclear war scenario. Like, we think basically what happened was people couldn't learn to cooperate and couldn't learn how to get along with each other, and they just bombed each other until everybody was either dead or had a lot to do to recover. Like, we think they were at like a similar technology level to Earth in the 21st century, maybe a little more advanced, but like they were advanced enough to have nuclear weapons, and they sure did use them. Like, we didn't go too deep into the development of that, other than like they aren't there anymore, and anything that like Iggy could have seen through his telescope is just ruins. Same person said, that's so rad. I'm glad you think so.
Episode 38 was the episode where Defiance
that was when Defiance died. Mm-hmm. Oof. The Banshee.
So that would have been season 2, episode 16, right?
17.
Okay.
21 episodes this season, but
okay. So yeah.
Yeah, you're right. But yeah, like 17, yeah. But yeah, that was very much what we were thinking with Saleya. Like, we didn't go too deep into the pain of developing what happened with Saleya, but like basically what we thought was, yeah, they bombed themselves back to the Stone Age, and anything that Iggy could see to be like proof of dragons on the moon was just ruins, and was like destroyed statues and things that could have been buildings once. And he extrapolated from there because Iggy's very smart, but like it got brushed off as conspiracy theory because there is nothing to see if you aren't looking for it. Somebody said, speaking of like the beacon, and tell me if it was mentioned and I wasn't paying attention, but like, how did the beacon form? I didn't quite get it. We think it just formed around like Justice's daughter, Truth, because she was so desperate to find out what had happened to her mom
and her sisters wouldn't talk
about it, that she sought out as much information on what was going on with Asheria and with like the upper echelons of Asherian society at the time as she could.
And she brought in other people that had those same concerns. The beacon formed around Justice's youngest daughter, essentially.
Essentially. Yeah.
And
that it became what it is today.
Yeah, and that persistent ideal of looking for the truth But like now that we're 10,000 years out, we have that divergence in people that are looking for the truth to tell everyone, and people that are looking for the truth because only a few people can know it.
Yeah. So they can know it and they can be on the inside,
Mhm.
which is kind of it's the Sabine versus Elisha dichotomy.
Mhm.
Oh goodness. 5 more minutes open question time. But yeah, we're so glad that these episodes are out. We're so glad. All of this lore was just shit that we had to keep under our hats for like a year and a half.
And like recording these 2 episodes was so hard. Like
somebody in the chat said, "Ooh, the beginning with good intentions again." Yep. Yeah. If there is any moral to all the downward spirals that have happened in this podcast, it's okay. Yes, you have good intentions. Examine your own methodology. Examine what you are doing with your good intentions is very much something that we've been hammering home with a lot of the organizations in this podcast. Oh goodness.
Or like even with the lander, really, because like if you want to examine like somebody that genuinely did have good intentions, and has caused
so
all of
much
this,
shit.
all of this.
Yep. Somebody in the chat said, "I'm so scared for Leo and Fee now."
You should be.
Yeah. Oof. Don't be a little scared. Be a little scared. Episode 12 is just
it's Clown Town.
It's Clown Town. It's the worst game of Dungeons and Dragons either of us have ever played.
We rolled 6 nat ones.
We rolled 6 nat ones. We did the somebody said, "Please tell us any funny moments when you had to hold your tongue because of all of this. I will be cackling." Okay. So back in the Beacon episodes in season 1, in the like episode 9, somebody predicted Australian aliens because of what Soren said, and they were completely right, and we just watched it happen like, huh.
People also predicted Kalessa and Eleonora ending up together. Like
way early.
Like before
it was a joke, like it was a crack ship, but like we were sitting there like,
well, before we had even considered that happening, because we didn't think that Leo and Eleonora were going to break up.
Yeah, and we had pitched it as like a secondary ship if Leo and Eleonora broke up, and like people called us on it at the beginning. We were like, well.
Yeah, and we have a lot of like second string ships like in the
and it was just like, man. Oh god, what else have we had to hold our tongues about? Something that will be revealed later in the season. And what else? I'm trying to think.
A lot of the things about Kimberly and Kiva.
Yeah, a lot of things about Kimberly and Kiva. Like it's very much, this has just been, people have predicted bits and pieces of this,
but without like the
without the big picture, and every time we've just been like
you're right, but
we can't tell you that. Like it's just been oh goodness. We've been waiting for these episodes for a long time. This is the lore on which the entire campaign is built, and we haven't been able to talk about any of it.
But now we can.
Somebody in the chat said, Kalanora has been my favorite crack ship since day one. Yeah.
Well, and now it's canon.
Congratulations.
Because I missed a roll by 1 point.
Yeah. Congratulations. Oh, I love them. Oh goodness. We get in a couple episodes, we get them doing some battle couple stuff in the background, which is fun. I love them.
You mean Kalanora doing?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh. That's what we're talking about.
Delicious.
Yes. Them too. Yeah. Oh goodness.
Okay, I think we're gonna call it here for the day.
We're gonna call it here for the day. That was a lot. It's fitting that even the Q&A for this episode is longer than usual.
I hope y'all had fun. $5 patrons, enjoy Omegroth 1 here in a few days.
Enjoy it. You $5 patrons, please enjoy. We're so sorry.
You won't enjoy it.
And everybody else, this is the first time in like 6 episodes that we haven't had to say check the content warnings for the next episode.
No, because the next episode it's just Clown Town. It's just us playing a very bad game of D&D.
Oh goodness. But yeah, everybody have a great week. We will see you next Monday, and good luck with Omegroth for our patrons, and have fun with episode 12 for everybody else.
Bye.